Hi, I'm Faroz Khan from iTrack Recruitment, and welcome to the Low Code Podcast, where we're dedicated to increasing awareness and appreciation of the power of low code. In this podcast, we'll hear from developers about their career journeys and how low code has enabled them to achieve new levels of success and innovation. So let's go. Hi, Greg. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you for agreeing to take part in the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
I'm guessing your background is virtual and not real.
Very virtual, yes.
Very nice, very nice. So, yeah, it'd be good to start with you giving a bit of a background of who you are, where you're from.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Greg Whitten. I'm the co-founder of Accelerated Focus. We're an OutSystems premier partner, and I'm also an OutSystems MVP. But before I found OutSystems, I was a high code developer for 20 years,
Oh.
and before professionally for 20 years, and then before that, I think I wrote my first program in 1984 in BASIC.
I
So
was born
the
in
old
1984. Bloody hell.
yeah, there you go. So the old
Wow.
10 print hello, 20 go
Yeah.
to 10.
Wow. Wow.
So yeah.
Wow. And when you were working kind of high code, was there a particular technology you were working with, or you worked at various?
Yeah, so at the very, very beginning, C++,
Yeah.
but I started my career right around the time that .NET came out. So
Okay.
it was pretty much all .NET from
Yeah.
when they released version 1 to when I stopped using
Yeah.
.NET in
Yeah.
2018 or 2019.
2018. Okay, cool. And like you said, yeah, you 20 years and then you've moved to low code OutSystems. Can you tell us how that came about, how how obviously it coincides with your accelerated focus as well. So it'd be good to kind of hear that
Yeah.
story, how you came across first OutSystems and low code, and um what convinced you to run your business based on that.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, it was kind of by accident. I was a .NET developer at the government here in Alberta where I live, and our director mentioned low code and saying that if we didn't switch to low code, like we just couldn't sustain projects and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I was like, what's low code? Like I've heard of tools in the past that
Yeah.
promised the world and delivered not a lot. So I Googled low code and first hit was OutSystems. So
Mhm.
I went to their website, started looking at it, and they had a bunch of tutorials and a free version that you could try out. So I'm like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
gonna try this.
Yeah.
And the goal being that I was gonna prove that it was just not worth using and that we
Yeah.
should just not waste our time focusing on these weird tools, right? Um, so I started going through the tutorials, started, playing with it, and I was like, okay, this is actually kind of cool, but I'm sure at some point I'm going to hit a wall. I'm going to find a way to break it or find something I can't do. And so I kept trying and trying and just throwing a bunch of stuff at it and stuff that I was struggling with in my day to day. I'm like, well, can it do this? Oh, it can. Wow. And so then I started seeing like this can actually start solving some of my problems that I'm actually having.
Yeah.
So I got kind of excited about it, started telling people at work about it. And me and the two other partners that started Accelerated Focus, we
Yeah.
were like, wow, there's something to this. Like
Mm.
this is gonna be huge. And
Yeah.
so we looked into what was available in terms of partnership and stuff like that with OutSystems and saw that
Mm.
they had a partner program.
Mm.
And so yeah, we started Accelerated Focus and the rest is history.
So was it really discovering out systems that gave you guys the thought of, okay, let's do our own thing and become a partner in this technology? Wow.
Yeah, because I mean the potential of it was huge to us.
Mm.
And at the time in Canada and North America, really as a whole, OutSystems really hadn't had much traction, or
Yeah.
a lot of people hadn't even heard of it.
Yeah.
And low code overall also didn't have a very strong footprint
Yeah. Yeah.
in North America. So while in Europe it was
Yeah. Yeah.
huge,
Yeah.
here it was
What's
very
that?
infant.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we saw potential there, and we're like, let's like don't wait, let's go now
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
learn as much as we can before it becomes popular, so that
Mm.
when someone needs services or whatever it is,
Yeah.
they can come to us because, we have the experience. So.
Yeah, yeah. And when you kind of I know you said you kind of Googled it and OutSystems came up. In your kind of process of evaluating, did you look at the other platforms, or were you just like, okay, I'm gonna look at this one, and you were just convinced so you didn't bother looking at anything else?
At first I was like, okay, I'm gonna see this through. I'm gonna finish
Yeah,
this online training, and I saw that they had certifications, so I'm like, I'm
yeah.
gonna get a certification too and see what that's all about.
Nice, yeah.
And so yeah, and then I started down that path of I saw that they had the different levels of certifications,
Mm.
got those, and then I don't know, probably about 6 months in, I was like, okay, what else is there? Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know OutSystems there, it's great, but are there
Mm.
competitors?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so yeah, I started looking at others, and I think maybe I was maybe spoiled at that point because I'd become used to like what
Yeah.
OutSystems had to offer in terms of the IDE. And so then when I tried others, I was comparing them against OutSystems. And so,
Yeah.
I'd try another IDE and be like, oh, this one's not as good because it doesn't do
Mm.
this and doesn't do
Yeah.
that. And so yeah, I explored them, but I didn't stick with
Yeah, yeah. And when you guys founded Accelerated Focus, and obviously, when you're a startup, you're going out pitching for business and things like that. For yourself, how, because low code was new to you, how
Mhm.
did you find when you went to customers and pitched low code and OutSystems?
So yeah, we actually, because we were a partner, we were able to be brought in on sales deals and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And so we would be in meetings joint with an OutSystems sales rep,
Mm.
talking to the prospective clients, and with the expectation that if they were to purchase OutSystems, then we would be the partner that they could go to for
Yeah.
services and stuff like that. And so for our very first customer, I remember we came up with this idea where we would just offer them 4 weeks of services for free, just
Oh,
so that they
nice.
could try us
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And we had nothing to lose because we are like, well, whatever. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
we're a fledgling company.
Yeah.
There might be risk there for some people. They might not
Mm.
want to deal with like a startup. So
Yeah.
yeah, we came up with that idea and it
Yeah.
worked. So
Nice.
we did 4 weeks of work for free, and then they said, yeah, we want to keep you guys on. We like what you guys have to offer, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
and they're still a customer today, 5 years later.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah.
And you're based in Canada, so obviously, everyone talks about North America. How's kind of Canada compared to the US when it comes to low code and OutSystems?
Um, Smaller.
Mm.
Uh, I mean, just by the sheer size of Canada, right?
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
we're a tenth of the size of the United
yeah,
States,
yeah,
so everything else kind of follows suit.
yeah.
Industry wise, everything's kind of a tenth of the
Mm.
opportunity and stuff like
Mm.
that. So, but no, but I mean, there are customers in Canada, and partner wise, I think there's us on the West Coast, and then I
Yeah.
think there's a couple on the East Coast.
Okay.
Apart from the big four, obviously,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
And is there kind of a big developer community there, or starting to grow?
it's pretty small. But that's the goal is that it does grow.
Mm.
We did start an OutSystems user group in Edmonton, so our
Nice.
city,
Yeah.
and um, I think there's that one. I think there might be one in Vancouver as well.
Okay.
But in yeah, for Canada, I think that's about it in terms
Yeah.
of official user groups for
Yeah.
OutSystems.
Yeah.
For other low code, I'm not sure if there's anything official in terms
Yeah.
of user group communities and stuff like that. But it's the word is definitely spreading.
Mm.
Before nobody knew what you were talking about. Now it's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah, low code. Tell me more.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So yeah.
That goes into my next question, because I was going to ask, obviously, that was 5 years ago, you kind of started this. How have you kind of noticed the shift from when you first started to now, with conversations, not just business related, just when you're talking to people, if they ask what you do,
Mhm.
how's the kind of shift in the last 5 years you found yourself?
Uh, I think from the business side, like people who are making the business decisions, they're more aware of low code now. And so they know that in order to keep up and deliver at a pace that gives you value, sooner than a 18 or 24-month project,
Yeah.
that they need to do something in order to keep up with their competitors, right?
Mhm.
And so low code is it's starting to permeate throughout the ranks.
Yeah.
People are starting to hear about it. They're starting to know that they need to start to evaluate it. Um, so that's the biggest difference, is that there's a little more awareness of low
Yeah.
code. From the developer side, though, when I talk to people who are, coworkers or colleagues
Yeah.
that I used to have back in the high code days,
Yeah.
they they're not as aware, I think.
Okay.
And when they find out about it, I think they're like I was, where they're skeptical. They're like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's not for me.
Yeah.
What I do, it won't handle it, kind of thing,
Mm,
right?
mm,
Um, but I just, try to explain how I've been using it for 5 years, and
yeah.
how it does everything that haven't had to do anything yet that I couldn't do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So basically, it's a
It's
legit tool, and it's
yeah.
kind of like, when you look back in the old days of switching from something that was, adopted to something new, whether it was, assembly to C, or, C and C++ to .NET, right?
Yeah.
There's always been that sort of resistance and the,
Mm,
the pushback. And I find this very similar,
yeah.
because, I started with .NET back when it was in its infancy,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I saw .NET and I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like, this could help this and this, and there
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
all the naysayers and the arguments about, well, no, it's running in a virtual machine. It's going to be slow.
Mm,
It's going to have performance problems. And, what about all this stuff that C++ can do, and how are you going to do that? And, maybe at the beginning you couldn't, but over the years, .NET evolved,
yeah.
recognized where it was lacking, filled those gaps, and now it's, something that
Yeah.
people use worldwide, right? So I see the same thing for low code. I think people will say, "Oh, no, no, it can't handle it." And then the more
Mm,
people that start to use it, and the more that low code itself grows, as
yeah.
companies like OutSystems and others see the gaps in their products, and start
Mm,
to fill those gaps, then yeah, I think just adoption is going to hit an
yeah.
exponential scale, and
Yeah.
start
I
to do
think
the
it
same
helps
as those
also.
others.
Yeah. I think it helps. Like you said, when you Googled it, you could just download it and play around with it and just kind of straight away get stuck in. And
Hmm.
it kind of helped answer a lot of the doubt in your own mind as you worked on it, which I think there's a lot more people, even, we founded similar time to when you founded
Okay, yeah.
2018 time. And for us, even the change in speaking to candidates back then from traditional to try and convince them to take a low code out systems role to now, there's such a big shift where they're a bit more open. They're a bit more open to, okay, yeah, all right, I'll download it and play around and see um, what it offers. And I think it's definitely, it leads into my next question. It's evolved, if just even probably in the time you've used it, in the last 5 years. And my question would
Yeah.
be kind of, in the 5 years that you've used it, obviously you were quite impressed when you first saw it, but from then till now, what are some features that they've released in that time that you've thought, wow, this is like next level, really good, really kind of, um, offering everything we need?
Hmm. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, when I started, they were still on the traditional web stuff in
Yeah.
OutSystems, and so
Yeah.
it was all ASP.NET in the back end,
Yeah.
and they had their mobile offerings, which did React JS in the back end.
Yes.
And so there was, very fundamental differences between doing a web app and doing a mobile app.
Yeah.
And then they released the reactive web, which took that same foundation as the mobile stuff, but then now you could do web apps with it. And so, I mean, that was a huge improvement, because just the way that the page lifecycle and everything worked, I found it a lot easier to develop those mobile apps. So that was a huge win. And then when they introduced, I mean, it's gone through so many different names, but it was Trusted
Yeah.
Advisor, then Architecture Dashboard. Now it's AI Mentor Studio. But
Yeah.
basically, the concept of having, you know, uh, algorithms and rules applied against your code to point out flaws, like security flaws, or not flaws, but just, adherence to best practices, stuff like that.
Mm, mm,
And to kind of
okay.
show you, like, hey, you're doing this, you might want to reconsider that, because
Yeah.
it's either going to lead to performance, or, some other kind of technical debt that you're going to spend a bunch of time fixing later on. I mean, that was huge when they announced it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now that it's, that too has evolved. So they're always adding new patterns and stuff like that. And, you know, there's some really cool stuff in there now, like
Yeah.
showing
Yeah.
you, here's duplicate code that you have in 6 different spots. You might want to refactor that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
just the ability to see that at a glance is pretty awesome. And you're not spending hours and hours doing code reviews, because you're looking through
Yeah.
a ton of code, it's summarized for you, which is really nice.
Yeah. It allows you to apply your time in a better place.
Yeah,
Definitely.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And obviously you're an MVP, but so you tend to know things that are going to happen in the future, which you're not allowed to share. But is there anything kind of that um you would like to see in the future that you've thought, okay, it'd be great if you know this was offered?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, and this is no way giving hints of stuff that's coming because I
Yeah,
actually really wish to see this. So
yeah.
OutSystems, if you're listening, add this to the roadmap. But
Yeah.
everything on everybody's lips these days is AI, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
but a lot of the times it's, oh well, it's chat GPT style and like
Yeah.
generated AI stuff that isn't,
Mm.
doesn't really directly help with what I do as a job, right? It's
Sure.
like, I'm developing, like I know
Mm.
you can use AI to, do high code stuff and stuff
Yeah.
like that now, but what I think would be really awesome is if you could have AI take a look at the code you've written and look at the apps that you've written and generate tests for them. Because that's
Mm.
one of the things that I still find is lacking in the whole low code space is
Yeah.
low code test generation.
Mm.
And devs don't want to do it. Testers usually don't have the development ability to write tests. Like
Yeah.
they can test, but they can't write automated tests.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things. It's still a pain to have done properly. So
Yeah.
if AI and low code could help solve that, then that would be top of my list in terms of the things
Uh,
I want to see.
I'll have to cut this and send this bit to OutSystems directly. And yeah, obviously, yeah, talking about the MVP thing, you're an OutSystems MVP. Can you tell us, usually it's some type of involvement or contribution. How did your kind of MVP badge come about?
Um, so when I started with OutSystems, right away I went and I got a certification,
Mm.
and they had the different levels. So you can have like your associate,
Yeah.
professional, and expert level, and the rules around them were kind of time based. So it's like you could get your professional 6 months after you got your associate, and then the expert you could get a
Okay.
year after.
Yeah.
And so I think I was like 4 or 5 months out from hitting that time period where I could get the expert one.
Mm.
And they were having a sale on, well, not a sale, but they were offering partners free
Ah,
certifications.
nice.
And so
Okay.
our partner manager reached out and he said, "Hey, do you guys need any certs?" I'm like, I'd love to take the expert one, but I haven't met the time requirements yet. And they're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
we can waive that. Don't worry about it.
Ah, nice.
So I got
Yeah.
the expert. And then one of the requirements at that time was to become an MVP, you needed to have the expert certification.
Okay.
And so I had it, and
Mm.
we were, I think it was the first virtual next step.
Ah,
And
yeah.
the
Okay.
the
Pandemic.
development
Yeah.
relations team had a little chat room open that you could go
Mm.
to. And one of my colleagues was in there, and they're like, "Oh, do you know anyone that would be, good for the MVP program? We have nominations are open now." And
Yeah.
so he put my name in.
Nice.
Uh, and little did I know, but our partner manager also nominated me as well.
Oh,
So then I
very
had
good.
these two
Yeah, that's cool.
nominations. So
Yeah.
all of a sudden their interest was piqued, and I was the first MVP in Canada.
Wow.
And
Nice.
so, just a bunch of things having me as a unique type of MVP sort of
Yeah.
put me on their radar. And then
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
got in touch with me, and I went through the process, and yeah, I became MVP. So
Wow. Cool. Are you
yeah.
still the only MVP in Canada, or is there another one now?
Ah, I may be.
I
I
think you're
think
still there.
I
Yeah. I
think there
think.
was another MVP that was an MVP prior that may have moved
Ah.
to
Okay.
Canada,
Fine.
but
Okay.
I think that might have actually fell through. I think he might have ended up in Seattle. So I might be the
Ah.
only
Okay.
one
So
in
you might
Canada
still be the
still.
only one.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. That's cool. And how have you found? Since you started working with OutSystems, the community is such a big thing. Plays a big part. How have you
Mm.
found? In your process of someone who came from traditional, for working with it with a very long time, and then obviously working with this new technology, being involved with the community. How have you found kind of that process?
Yeah, it's good. Like having the access to the MVP community is pretty great. Especially since we can take that opportunity to sort of bounce ideas off the
Mm.
people inside OutSystems, and they're always looking for feedback and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it that part of it is pretty awesome. And then just the part of being able to help the community as well, who's,
Mm.
you know, they're looking for answers to questions on the forums and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
having that ability to kind of go in and say, okay, yeah, I know I can help with
Mm.
this, and
Yeah.
I don't know who you are, but here's an
Yeah.
answer,
Yeah. I'll
kind of
help
thing,
you
right?
out.
It's
Yeah.
kind of like, you know, when I was a high code developer and using things like Stack Overflow or whatever, where it's just like you have that very specialized community.
Yeah.
You're asking questions, you're answering questions. So
Yeah.
it's pretty great.
Yeah. Cool. And you know, obviously, you know, you guys working with a number of customers and things like that. Is there one or two examples you can give of, you know, an interesting project that you've been a part of?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have the everyday run of the mill stuff.
Yep.
So it's like, oh, here's an app that does
Yeah.
this and
Yeah.
that, and you know, everybody else is doing the same kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
apps.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we've done some pretty neat stuff. There was one app that we did for a customer where they had a bunch of data that they collected from like sensors and stuff like that, and then they wanted to do uh, like data analytics and then pass all that into like a visualization so they could see like how that all visualized. And so we did the visualization piece from that. So they would just feed data from their data lake, and then we built like like a dynamic SVG component so you could like visualize the data, but then be able to scale it and zoom in, zoom out as
Mm.
far as you needed and all that kind of stuff. So that was a pretty
Yeah.
cool one.
Yeah. That's very cool.
And it was actually funny because they're like, is this even possible? Can we do this without systems? And so I looked, I
Yeah.
was like, oh yeah, for sure. And so I spent like an afternoon just whipping together like a quick POC.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, so we could do something like this, and you know, you'd have this data come in, blah blah blah. I showed them what it did, and they're like, this is great. This is exactly what we need. Like it's done.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, no, it's not done, guys.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
still a lot of work, but
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, so that like 4 hour POC or whatever became eventually the finished product. So
Yeah.
that was pretty cool.
And I guess, like, you know, because you've had that traditional background, you probably appreciate that you can put something together so quick to show a customer versus what you were probably used to for
Oh
most of
yeah,
your life.
like that was one of the things that hooked me at the
Yeah.
beginning was how fast I could do everything. I'm
Yeah.
like I just did what would take me 4 weeks in like
Yeah.
2 days. Like that's crazy. Um, and yeah, so the speed component of it was probably the first thing that I noticed as
Yeah.
being beneficial. And
Yeah.
people are, you know, one of the questions that people ask me sometimes, like, oh, aren't you worried that you're going to be out of a job because, you know, people could do it? I'm like, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't
Yeah.
understand. I'll still have a full-time job. It's just instead of being able to do one thing in a year, I'll be able to
Yeah.
do like 5 things in a year.
Yeah. Multiple.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that list of all the wish lists that the customer has, it gets cleared out that much quicker.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's one of the things I've noticed too, is that, you know, before IT was always like the bad guy or the bottleneck or the people that were
Yeah.
like the reason why something couldn't happen.
Yeah.
And now that I've been at OutSystems customers, it's the opposite. Business is like, no, 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 guys, slow down. We're not ready. We're not ready.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so IT is now waiting on business to, you know, make their decisions and
Yeah.
come up with, you know, well, what are our requirements? We weren't thinking we are going to be able to work on this for like at least
Yeah.
another 6 months, but now here you are saying we're ready for more. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, it's the first time in my career where, you know, IT is sitting there waiting for business
Yeah. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
to, to tell us when we're ready to go.
Yeah. And do you find, obviously, you know, the ITs, do you find like the IT team are kind of a lot more involved on the business side as well?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if that's just because of low code or if it's
Mm.
more just how kind of agile's sort of worked its
Yeah. Yeah.
way into
Sure.
sort of all projects.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the the being able to interact with the business
Mm.
one-on-one sort of between developer and you know SME or whatever,
Yeah.
that's invaluable. Um, because there's, you know, you get rid of the middleman, just things flow
Yeah.
much easier.
Yeah.
There's no, and especially when it's so quick, right? So it's like
Mm.
businesses say, oh, well, we wanted this to do this. It's like, okay, how about like this? Right.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, perfect. Or no, change this and do that. So
Yeah.
yeah, being able to, you know, either, you know, back when people sat in the same room, you know, sit
Yeah.
next to each other and be like, hey, look at my screen. Let me show you this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, just that kind of one-on-one collaboration,
Yeah. Yeah.
it makes it so much easier.
Yeah. And do you find that, I know obviously you said like OutSystems will kind of have a salesperson and you guys will be in on the meeting, but once you're kind of in a project and, you know, working with the customer, do you sometimes think, you know, because you've got that, they may be have adopted low code after using traditional for many years, do you
Mhm.
sometimes find it's an advantage for someone like yourself who's come from that background as well, so you can kind of talk on a more deeper level and share the frustrations?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the low code is just a tool, right?
Yeah,
So whether you're developing low code or you're, developing in high code, you still need to go through the same sort of experiences and, go from being a junior developer to a senior developer
yeah,
to now, maybe you're doing solution architect or client architect or whatever it is. And you just kind of progress up that and you learn as you go, right? So
yeah,
those experiences are the same regardless because you're like, oh yeah, I developed this thing, whether it was in high code or low code,
mm,
and I figured out what worked, what didn't work.
yeah,
And so now I can apply that in the future to
yeah,
things, right? So yeah, I think just having that experience of 20 years of software development and doing architecture and stuff like that, now you can go in and say, okay, you guys have a problem that you need solved, and we can solve it for you. And turns out that low code is the tech that we're going to use to
yeah.
solve it, but the approach is still the same,
The
right?
same,
It's
yeah,
figure out what needs to be done, figure out the best way to do it. Maybe low code isn't the right solution in
yeah,
that particular case, but
yeah,
at least you can evaluate and apply and see like, you know, what gets you the most value to your business the
yeah,
fastest, right? And
yeah,
if that's low code, then great. If it's something else, let's explore that too.
yeah. So be it. And have
Yeah.
you had to touch any .NET since switching to OutSystems?
I thought I would. That was a big selling factor was when, OutSystems like, you can take a .NET library and extend it and put
Yeah,
that into your local. I'm like, this is perfect. Like, if there's anything
yeah.
it can't do, I can make it do it. And
You
I
can
thought
do
I'd
it,
be
yeah,
writing all these .NET extensions and
yeah.
stuff like that. And I think I wrote one that
Wow,
that I
not
actually
bad.
used quite a bit, right? It was
Yeah,
like I wanted some of the system level functions that they had, and I wanted to expose those because
yeah,
the ones in OutSystems just weren't enough, right? And there was
yeah.
some math stuff I wanted to do and stuff like that. So, but yeah, other than that, I think there was one other that we needed like an RSS feed reader or something like that, and so we wrote one in .NET or
Mm,
had one in .NET that we wanted to reuse,
yeah.
and then just made an extension for it and
Wow.
used that instead. So
That's
yeah.
cool. That's cool. And you touched on it before, because obviously you've worked in traditional for a long time and you've
Mhm.
probably got a large network of people who are still in traditional. And one thing I like to ask all my guests is obviously, what's your kind of message to those who still are not convinced and don't believe, that, or just don't respect low code. They just think, that's doesn't offer what we can do. What would be
Yeah.
your message to those kind of people?
Yeah, I mean, give it a try, right? See what it does for you. Like, does it solve any problems that you have in your day to day? Obviously, unless you're a decision maker, you're not going to be able to just
Yeah.
switch your whole company to using low code. But as a voice, right? You could suggest it and
Mm,
kind of sell the benefits if you've tried it and have seen what the benefits are. It's a tool like anything else, and if it's the right tool, then give it a shot. Otherwise, keep doing what you're doing. But yeah, don't just discount it because it's something new.
yeah.
Um, I hear some people say like, oh, well, I don't want to switch to low code because then I have to start all over again.
Mm,
But it's like, no, all your skills that you've been building up over the last
yeah.
10, 15, 20 years, however long you've been developing, they all transfer, right? It's that developer mindset that I like to say
Yeah.
is what really gets you that development ability. It's not the language you're using or the tool. Because, even in high code, you might have been a C# developer for a ton of time. And now you're like, well, we have to use Python. So I'm going to learn Python,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How long does it take you? It takes you very little time to learn Python. And then you apply all the same principles and everything you've been doing in .NET to Python. And now you're off to the races, right?
Yeah.
So same thing with OutSystems or any low code platform. You take a couple weeks to learn it, figure out, what's different, what's new, what can I do? And then after that, it's just, okay, I'm a developer. I know how to do development. And
Yeah.
so you use the tool. So yeah, that would be my message is just don't don't discount it, give it a
Yeah.
shot, see what it can do.
Yeah. I think we say something similar when we speak to people that, even if you use it and, you know, it's not for you. It's just a new skill you've learned at the end of the day that you never know where you could, you know, a lot of people use it for their own personal projects as well. You know what I mean? Play
Yeah.
around with things. And I think that can really um that gains a lot of people's interest. Okay, I can do some of my own. So I may not get a job in it if they don't have the relevant experience, or it's just, you know, they're not kind of at that level, but they can play around with it themselves and really kind of, you know, build up their own experience in ways. And obviously with the tutorials and things like that, and the certifications, like you said, there's enough certifications around with OutSystems that they can, you know, have a go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And just to kind of final question, you know, obviously usually I ask people about personal aspirations, but you're a co-founder of a company, so you know it's more around kind of, you know, with you guys, it's kind of 5 years. You know, what's your kind of short to long term goals? What are you guys kind of looking to achieve?
Hmm. Yeah, so obviously one of the things that we want to make sure that we're on top of is, you know, our whole AI strategy and
Yeah,
stuff like that. So in the short term, that's one thing we're going to be focusing on, is just what what's available in terms of, you know, AI and how we can utilize it, and how we can not just utilize it as a toy, but to actually bring value to customers,
yeah,
and how can we integrate that with the low code space, right? So um, coming up with, you know, either novel solutions or ideas, or even just using it internally, right? How can we use AI to make our jobs easier and
yeah,
get get more done, that is the fun stuff, rather than
yeah,
the stuff that just let the AI handle that kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Cool.
definitely looking at that. And then, you know, obviously we want to see low code grow. And so yeah, we're always on the lookout to see, you know, is there ways that we can take low code, you know, out systems, and combine it with, you know, some other low code tool, or
Yeah,
something that's, you know, out there that can work
mm,
in harmony, right?
yeah,
Because there's a ton of tools, and
yeah,
they don't have to work by them, like all by themselves.
yeah.
They
Exactly.
can join together and make something really great. So
Cool. Well, thank you for taking the time. It was good to talk to you, and
yeah, it was good talking to you.
hopefully we meet
Thanks for having
again.
me on.
No, it was a
Yeah.
pleasure. You kind of didn't have a choice when I asked you face to face, wasn't it?
That's right.
No, I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah.
And I look
Well, I
forward
know
to.
Travis is jealous. He's like, "Where's my invite?"
Yes, I told him that.
So he'll have
I
to be
told him
next.
he can be there next season. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So no, I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.